What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. It's time to continue our 2023 schedule preview / projected records for the 2023 college football season, and we continue them with the Florida State Seminoles. Here was a schedule last year for Florida State. The overall record for this team last year was 10-3 overall, had a 10-win season last year. Pretty much, one of the teams that was a contender in the ACC last year. Probably had a chance to win the ACC last year as well. You look at who they played in the non-conference. They played Duquesne, LSU on the road, actually in a neutral site game at New Orleans. And they didn't really have too tough of a non-conference schedule. Obviously, they only played 2 non-conference games on that schedule as well. And, of course, there's no divisions as well in the ACC this year. But I forgot to mention they also played Louisiana out of the non-conference, so they had 3 non-conference games last year. But overall, not too tough of a non-conference schedule for this team. Of course, that game against LSU, they ended up winning that one on Labor Day weekend, so definitely a game that they really won at the last second. You look at the losses they had last year, Wake Forest at home, probably could have won that game. This is a team that probably could have gone 11-2 if they would have probably won that game. NC State and Clemson were very understandable, but Clemson, obviously, that was a very winnable game for them as well. They had that game at home, but obviously, it was a pretty good season for Florida State. Really high expectations heading into next year. Obviously, ESPN's really hyped on this team. Of course, they have them ranked number 4 in the way too early top 25 polls, and they have a lot of guys coming back. A lot of production coming back for this Florida State team. Jordan Travis coming back, probably a Heisman contender heading into 2023. Let's look now at the schedule for this Florida State team heading into 2023. And here's the schedule for Florida State. And you look at who they'll play in the non-conference. They'll once again play LSU this time to kick things off. And this one will be on a Sunday night, I believe. So, and then this time will be in Orlando. So, yeah, they're kind of creating some kind of a rival game here, it looks like, for LSU and Florida State. But this one will be in Orlando. Last year was in New Orleans, and now this time it will be Orlando. So it's kind of like a home field advantage game for Florida State, but it is a neutral site game. And then they'll also play Southern Mississippi here on September the 9th, and then they'll also play North Alabama on November the 18th. And once again, there are no divisions in the ACC. Let's go game by game now for this Florida State team. So they'll kick off the season on September the 3rd on Sunday night on Labor Day weekend against LSU in Orlando. LSU going to be another great team this year. They have some production coming back. Of course, Jaden Daniels coming back for another year. So we're expecting him to be one of those top quarterbacks probably heading into the SEC. And then they'll play Southern Mississippi here on September the 9th. So they'll start out with 2 non-conference games here in the month of September. And then they'll play back-to-back road games on the road at Boston College. And then they'll play on the road at Clemson. So got tough back-to-back road games here in the early month of September. And you're playing Clemson pretty early in the season as well. Definitely, though, a winnable game for Florida State. We don't really know what's going to happen for Clemson this year. Obviously, the quarterback situation's not been really good over the past 2 years now for Clemson. So if Florida State, brings their A game, they're going to have a really good shot to win this game. Then they'll get a bye week after that game. Then they'll play Virginia Tech here at home. And then they'll play Syracuse at home. And then they'll play Duke here on October the 21st. So you got 3 straight home games here against Virginia Tech, Syracuse, and Duke. Obviously, Duke probably Syracuse and Duke will be one of those tough home games for them. Syracuse and Duke were pretty good surprise teams from last year. And then they'll play on the road at Wake Forest. A Wake Forest team that's kind of in a rebuild mode, but it's definitely a revenge game here for Florida State. Obviously, they lost to them last year. And then they'll play on the road at Pittsburgh. Back-to-back road games here against Wake Forest and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh will be a tough game here on November the 4th, especially when it's in late November. It's always pretty tough to play in the month of November because teams are better by that time. And then they'll play against rival Miami here on November the 11th. Should be an interesting matchup than it was last year. Of course, Miami had a pretty disappointing season last year, but they should be really better this time. The recruiting's going well for them down there at Miami. The good news is that Florida State will get this one at home, so they don't have to play on the road for that game. Then they'll play North Alabama here, and then they'll end things out here on the road at Florida on November the 25th. They beat Florida last year. This is a team that we really don't know what they're going to look like this year. They really had a lot of losses last year. And Florida could be a team that maybe surprises a little bit, but this one is in late November. It's obviously the last regular season game of the year, and it's obviously a tough place to play in pretty much the swamp. So the schedule for Florida State overall, not too bad. I mean, they still have to play LSU at home. They got to play, obviously 2 SEC teams on this schedule out of the non-conference, especially one of them on the road, and they still have to play Clemson on the road. But the schedule, I think, are very winnable games. I think some of them are very winnable games for Florida State. Let's now get to the projection here for Florida State. And this is a scale I've been pretty much using for the projections. If it's a 1% game, that's going to stay in the red. Pretty much games where Florida State has no chance of winning. 20% games, these will be in the orange. Pretty much games where Florida State has about a couple touchdowns of an underdog. 40% games, about a touchdown underdog in the yellow. You probably won't see any of those red or orange or yellow games on here, perhaps. 50-50 games, these will stay pretty much in the white, games where they can go either way. 60%, these are games where Florida State's going to be favored by about a touchdown in the purple. Blue means they'll be favored by about a couple touchdowns, about 80%. And then 90% games, these are pretty much games where Florida State's going to be favored by more than 3 touchdowns. And that's where we're going to start with. We're going to start with the easy wins here for Florida State, and also the green games at about 90%, more than 3 touchdowns. And I got 2 of those on the schedule. I got Southern Mississippi and North Alabama, 2 of the weakest non-conference teams on here, on September the 9th and November the 18th against North Alabama. I really don't think Florida State has no business of losing both of these games. I pretty much think they're over 90%, and I think they do win both of these games pretty easily, and they will be big favorites heading into both of those games. Now we go to the games where Florida State's going to be favored by about a couple touchdowns in the blue, about 80%, and that's almost the majority of their schedule, but I got 4 of them on the schedule. I got Boston College on the road, Virginia Tech at home, Syracuse at home, and then Duke at home. Boston College obviously kind of in rebuild mode as well. They had a pretty tough season last year. Virginia Tech obviously had a pretty tough season as well last year. And Syracuse and Duke are definitely at 80%. They're not over 80%. I thought about putting these in the purple, but it's a home game. If these were games that were going to be played on the road, I probably would have put these in the 60% category in the purple. But with home field advantage, I'm going to say that Florida State will still be about a couple touchdowns of a favorite. And also, these are ACC matchups, and I can't really put any of these in the green as well. So I'm going to stick with it and put it in the blue for both Syracuse and Duke. I think they'll still be big favorites, though, heading into both of those games. We go to the games now where Florida State's going to be favored by about a touchdown in the 60% range in the purple. And I got 2 of those on the schedule. That's the 2 road games against Wake Forest and Pittsburgh. Wake Forest obviously will be a tough game, but Wake Forest kind of in a rebuild situation. Sam Hartman's really gone now, and he has transferred away from this team. Pittsburgh obviously will be a tough one. I thought about putting this one in the 50-50 games, but like I said, this is just based off of where the teams were last year. Pittsburgh was kind of an up-and-down team last year. They weren't that same team when Kenny Pickett left, and I got to just put this one in the purple. But it could change by the time we get into my predictions in the month of May, and I could probably change my pick to probably where Pittsburgh could win, so you never know. But I think both of these games, Florida State will be favored by about a touchdown. And pretty much, do I have any games here that Florida State will be an underdog? I really don't think they have any games on here that they'll be underdogs in. I think, the rest of the schedule here, LSU, Clemson on the road, Miami at home, and then Florida on the road are pretty much all 50-50 games for this Florida State team. I mean, LSU, obviously, that's a neutral site game. It's hard to project that one. I know Florida State beat them last year. They probably should be favored, perhaps, but I'm going to stick with it and keep it in the white. Clemson on the road, I probably could have put this one as an underdog game for Florida State, but I'm going to stick with it and put it here and put it in the white. I think, this will be a back-and-forth game. Very winnable game for Florida State, I believe, as well. And I think they have a really good shot to beat Clemson this year on the road. Miami, obviously, a rival game that you never know what can happen. And obviously, Florida on the road, a rival game, you never know what can happen as well. So I think, all 4 of these games are pretty much 50-50 games. Let's now get to the projection here. This is simply not a prediction. This is simply a projection based on this schedule. And if you look at the games that Florida State is favored in and also the games that they are 50-50 games like LSU, Clemson, Miami, and Florida, the overall projection for this Florida State team in 2023 comes out to be 9-3 for 2023. I think they, like I said, maybe they win 2 out of those 4 games here on the schedule. Maybe LSU they could probably win that game. They could probably lose that game. Maybe they can lose on the road to Clemson, but beat Miami at home. Maybe they can beat Florida as well on the road, but it will be a tough place to play. Obviously, Florida on the road going to be a tough one, and then Clemson obviously on the road going to be a tough game as well. But I think, all of these games on this schedule are very winnable games for Florida State. They may not be favored in them, perhaps, but I think they do have a really good shot to beat these teams. And this Florida State team, they have a shot to maybe go 11-1 this year. That's probably the best case scenario for this team. Maybe a 10-2 is best case scenario. I think worst case scenario would be probably 8-4. If this team probably goes 8-4, that would just kind of be a disappointing season for Florida State, considering they went 10-3 last year. But like I said, a lot of expectations and a lot of hype for this Florida State team heading into 2023. And obviously, Jordan Travis coming back is really huge for them. But that's my overall projected record for this Florida State team, 9-3 in 2023. Let me guys know what you think about Florida State and what you think their projected record will be. And also give me your thoughts on the schedule down in the comments below. And stay tuned here for more sports content on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.